Hello YouTube and welcome to another Cisco ASA tutorial. So in this video I'm going to show you how to configure TACACS Plus authentication for the Cisco ASA firewall. So are you ready? Let's get started. So in one of my previous videos I showed you how to configure actually AAA server for the Cisco ASA. And we have used actually radio server in order to configure authentication, okay? But one of the weakness of this radio server is it doesn't allow us to actually control what action the user is authorized to perform on the Cisco ASA, okay? So with the help of the TACACS Plus server we can do that. So TACACS Plus server can actually authenticate the user. This is the first A in AAA server, but it can also see or configure what action the user can perform on the Cisco device, okay? So here as an example we'll be using this Cisco ISE, which stands for Identity Services Engine. It allows us to create actually a TACACS Plus server, and we be configuring two accounts. One which has admin rights, which means it can perform all the commands on the Cisco ASA, and we'll create also a second account. This account will be just an operator account, so it will actually just execute the command that we want it to execute, okay? So I will show you how with the example so you can see in live how we can do that, okay? So first let's log on to our ISE Cisco server. So I will use here my credentials. So here we go, we are on our server. So in order to create users we should first create actually the groups to whom they belong. So for that we go to here to administration, as you can see, and we go also to identities, okay? And here you can see different tabs. So as I told you, first we have to create two groups for our two users. So let's go to groups, and let's create a first one, but here you have to make sure that you must create your group inside the user identity groups. So I will hit user identity groups so you can see the different groups that already exist by default. So I will create mine. So I will create it, for example I will give it as name admins, okay, and I will subnet. So it's easy to create groups. So here we go, you can see it has been created. So this is the group. I will be adding actually admin user into this group. So let's create another group for operators. So we can just name it operators, okay, and this group will create just a user with operation actually commands, okay? So now that we have created our two groups, let's create our users. So we go back to identities, and here we go, we can create now our users. So let's create our first admin user. So let's create it, for example, and we'll give it as name admin01, okay? So the status is enabled. So here we have to give it a login. So I will just type Cisco 123 for example. So here make sure that the password must contain at least uppercase and also some digital character. So I will repeat the password, and also I will do the same for the enable password. Okay, so now we have to put it on the admins group. So here you can see user group. All I have to do is to select our admins group. Here we go, And finally we can submit or save the config. Okay, so the user admin 01 has been created. Now let's create another user. So this user, I will call it opper01. So as I told you, this opper will just have some basic command that it can execute. Okay, I will give it same password. And also for the enable password. But this time I have to put it on the oppers group. Okay, oppers, here we go, and I will save the config. So now we have created our two users and we put them in the corresponding groups. Okay, so before to proceed to the other step, there is a very important thing that we must enable in order to actually enable the TACACS Plus protocol on this Cisco ISE. Okay, so in order to do that, we go to Administration System Deployment. Okay, and here you can see the different deployments. So default one, and here you can see the name of your ISE Cisco server. So you click on it in order to edit it, and you have to make sure to enable device admin service. Okay, so this is very important if you want to configure your Cisco ISE as TACACS Plus server. So I will enable this option and I will save the config. Okay, so after that we have to add actually our Cisco ASA as network device to our TACACS Plus server. So for that you go also to Administration, and here you can see network resources, then network devices. So I will click on it. So here I already created, but it's pretty simple. Let's actually delete it and create it once again. Okay, so in order to add your device, which is in this case Cisco ASA, it's pretty easy. You just click on this add button here, you give it a name. So I will call it Cisco ASA. You can give a description, and the most important thing here is that you have to add its IP address. So mine is 192.168. Here I have to type the dots, so .1.2. So this is the IP address of my Cisco ASA device. Okay, so of course here you can choose the device type if you want, so I will leave it as a default. Okay, but the most important thing here is you have to go to your TACACS authentication settings. So you have to select it, and here you have to provide actually shared secret, and the secret must be the same, the one that you will configure in your Cisco ASA in order to authenticate with the Cisco ISE. Okay, so I will input a password simple, for example Cisco 123. Okay, and that's it. We have added our Cisco ASA to our Cisco ISE. So let's submit that. Okay, so as you can see now, Cisco ASA has been added as network device. So now we have to create what we call a TACACS profile. Okay, so for that you go to Work Centers, Device Administration. Okay, then Policy Elements. Here we go, you click on that, and here on the left you see a tab called Result. Okay, so you can see here TACACS profile. So we'll create actually a TACACS profile. So I will click on this link here, and I will create a TACACS profile. So here I will call it, for example, privilege 15, because actually both of our users will have this profile. Okay, so here the default privilege will be 15, so the highest privilege on Cisco devices, and the maximum privilege is also 15. Okay, so even for our operator, user operator 01, it will also have privilege 15, because for example, if you want to execute the command show running config, it must also have privilege 15. Okay, that's why we will be affecting this profile to both users. Okay, so now we have created our TACACS profile. The name is prev15. So let's add profile in order to see that. Here we go, and let's submit this config. Okay, so now as you can see, our profile 15 has been added. Okay, next we have to configure the command set. So just above TACACS profile there is TACACS command set. So the command sets, here we define the commands that each user can execute. So as I told you, for the user admin 01, we will allow it to configure or to execute all the commands, but for the operator 01, I will just configure some basic command that he can execute. Okay, so let's add command sets. So I will, for example, call the first one all commands, so you can name it whatever you want. And here all I have to do is to check this box here, permit any command that is not listed below, which means this command sets can be executed or without any actually restriction. Okay, so this is the command set for our admin 01. Okay, so I will submit that, and let's add now a command set for our operator 01. Okay, so I will call it that show commands, because I will allow them just to execute some show commands. Okay, and here I will add commands that the user operator 01 can actually use. So I will add, so here you can see I can permit the command, for example show, and I will validate that. So I will also permit him to execute the command, for example ping. Let's add another one, for example exit, in order to exit a level, and also let's add logout. Okay, so this command set will be affected to our operator 01. Okay, so you can see I have just allow him actually to execute this 4 commands. So I will submit that. So now we have created our profile, we have created our command set. So how can we actually bend all that to our users? Okay, so for that it's pretty easy. You go also to work centers, and this time you go to device admin policy sets. So I'll click on that. So by default you can see the default policy set. So I will go into it, and here you can see the authorization policy. So I click on it, and I will add the different policies. I will add a policy for our user admin, and I will add a policy for our user operator 01. Okay, and here you can see the conditions. Here we can specify the condition which will apply to this actually policy, and the condition here will be this user must belong to this group admins or operators that we have created previously. So I will show you that. So let's create our first policy. So authorization rule, so I will call it, for example, for admins. So the condition here is we have to select this identity group, So the identity group must be equal, so the name must be equal to actually as I told you, we have created identity group name admins, so you can see here that I can use it, and I will use it. So this is the condition, which means it applies only for the group admins. So here we select the command set, so here we choose the command set that we have created, all commands, and for the profile I will choose the profile that we have created, privilege 15 profile. Okay, so I will add another authorization rule, but this time for the user upper 01. So I will click here this plus button and I will name it here uppers, and condition this time, as I told you, it will be just equals to actually uppers group. Here we go. But this time for the uppers group, the command set will be just show commands, and the profile will use the same profile for both. Okay, so this is it. We have finished configuration of our Cisco ISE. So I will save that and see if everything is okay. Okay, so now everything is good, everything is finished in our actually Cisco ISE. All we need now is to go actually to our Cisco ASA and configure the TACACS server. Okay, so for that I will actually use my SDM. So this is our SDM. So here we'll be configuring actually the TACACS server. So I will go to configuration, and here you can see device management. Under device management there is triple server group. So here we have to add our AAA server group. So in this case it's a TACACS Plus server. So I will add it. I will give it a name, so let's just call it TACACS. So the protocol of course is TACACS Plus, so I will leave that as a default. Okay, now we keep that selected and I will add it here in the server section. So our TACACS is in the inside zone actually. So the IP address, as you can see here, it's let me show you, it's 192.168.1.129. okay, so let's input that. Okay, so the default port is 49. So this is the very famous actually port for TACACS Plus server. And here the server secret key. So remember the one that we have entered when we configured actually, when we added actually our Cisco ISE as a device network in our Cisco ISE. So it's Cisco 123, and I will hit OK. And here is a button to test if the connection between our Cisco ASA and the Cisco ISE works. So I will test that. So here they said that I must apply changes, yes, and this is the command if you want to enter that in the command line. Here I have to input of course my login. So let's save that. Here we go. So let's test now our TACACS Plus server. So I'll use, for example, the one that I have entered, admin01, with the password that I have entered. And you can see authentication test to host is successful. So everything is okay. So let's test the other user, which is upper01, and also for the password and also the authentication is successful, and we can see actually the logs on our server. So if I go back to the server here, so if I go to operation, you can see here TACACS live logs. So I can click on that and see the different login actually attempts that has been performed against our Cisco ISE. So this is the last one. So as you can see here, for the upper 01 and for admin 01. Okay, so for the last 5 minutes actually, here we go. So I just filter for the last 5 minutes in order to show just the last 2 ones. Okay, but now the moment of truth. So as I told you, all this process is actually has been performed in order to allow admin just to execute all the commands, but for the upper 01 it will just execute the 4 commands that we have entered. So let's test that. Okay, so I will actually go to our because I didn't actually finish the configuration of our Cisco ASA, we have to go here to AAA access, and here we have to, for the authentication I will use also the TACACS server group that we have created, and for the SSH I will also use TACACS. Okay, because I want to test that using SSH. Okay, for the authorization also I will use TACACS. So I will apply that, I will send, and I will save. Here we go. So now let's test that. So I will use PuTTY as a SSH client. Here we go. So I will input here the IP address of my server, which is, or actually not server, but our Cisco ASA. So 168.1.2. Here we go. So here I will log in using the upper 01. So remember, for the upper 01 I have authorized just 4 commands: exit, logout, ping, and show. Okay, so I will input here the password, and I am in. So let's ping the Google DNS. So it's working. So let's use, for example, traceroute. Traceroute, a command that exists, but we didn't allow upper 01 to use it. Here we go. You can see that command authorized failed, and we can also see that in the log of our server, our ISE server authorization here. Okay, so we can click on these details here to see the details why the authorization has failed. So here attempt command authorization failed. Okay, command failed to match permit rule. Okay, because we have authorized just 4 commands. Okay, so this is pretty handy. So let's now connect using admin 01, and hopefully it can execute all the commands. So I will log in using admin 01 this time. Cisco 33. Here we go. So now you can of course use ping, but you can also use traceroute. So as you can see, you can use traceroute command also. So this is how we configure actually our Cisco ASA for TACACS Plus authorization. So as always, I hope it has been informative for you, and I want to thank you for viewing. Bye bye.